Thank you, Claudia, and everyone else that was involved in this wonderful event. I am so honored to be here. You cannot possibly imagine. So for me, this is, I'll be talking about this for a long time. People will have to listen to me. So you'll notice that there's a sheet that's also with your booklet. That is my poem that continues. The first part is in the book, and then the second part is on that sheet. The poem, the way that I look at poetry, I just want to front-end load this a little bit because there's some pieces that I want to explain. One of the things for me about poetry is that it is so intimate. One of the reasons probably I'll remember and talk about this a lot. For me, poetry is like looking in someone's underwear drawer. So, you know, when I hear and read poetry, I know that there's a privileged access to somebody's personhood, and for me, it's at that level. So that's how I understand poetry. The first part of the poem that's in the booklet is written in a more traditional free verse format, which I usually do. And usually what happens is that the poems come out, that's what they are. I think I'm just an interpreter for an angel, actually. A very frustrated angel that wants to write. The second part is what I call flarf, which for me is using the internet as a language slot machine. So I use Google to mine for words. And the reason I do that is because although French was my first language, I learned it orally. So I learned French listening, and I understand perfectly. And I can read French, but I cannot write it well. It's really a struggle for me to write. So what I do is that Google gives me back my language, which is kind of weird in a way, but that's what happens. And so if I want to write something, I will put in the search term, and what I get back, I mine that. So for me, that's my interpretation of flarf. Now, whether or not that is the actual definition of flarf, I know flarf is kind of like challenging avant-garde, kind of breaking it up. But for me, I'm kind of maybe taking what I need. Maybe it's Googleisms and I'm practicing and I'm calling it flarf. But anyways, I am a liminal generation, so I'm standing in the doorway we're looking at, and one of the presenters today in the conference talked about taking the old but also going toward the new. So part of the reasoning that I do what I'm doing in this context, in this poem, is a resolve. And so I'm using, the thing that happened in my family, the story about this is that my grandmother, this is about my father's mother, who lived with us for 2 years, she was bedridden. She believed in curses. She believed in tirer les cartes, the fortune telling. My mother did not, so I was caught between the two of them. My mother with her reasonableness, and then my grandmother with all of her old ways, old world ways, because for me, we're never that far from the immigration line. And so for the computer, in this poem, was like the fortune teller, like the oracle, giving me back the language that I needed. And I have divided the world in my mind into two categories. There are those who are scavengers and those who are not. And so I think people who take words from places have that sense of scavenging and survival. And one of the thoughts that came to me about the translation conference is, you know, you might think about translation as going green. You know, the repurposing of the verse, you know, there's, you know, the remades. And so the fact that there was never a word wasted, particularly with the translations. The other thing, what happens with this poem, the flarf is the resolution. But as I tell my writing students, there's a lot of roads that go into any given situation. You can arrive at any situation that you want. But as far as I know, there's only one road out. I've looked all over this with a fine-tooth comb. I've written pages and pages of it, but out of any other situation, there was one road, and that road is forgiveness. There was no other road out. And so for the flarf, this poem is a poem of absolution, maybe self-absolution, I'm not sure. But I also would like you to invite you to contemplate, because what I am is what assimilation looks like, and I no longer apologize for that. So when I read French, that's what you will be hearing is my assimilation French, in that I have the language, but I have it at a level where there are reasons why I have it the way I do. And so for me, there is questions to be asked. Legacy. Legacy, what the old lady said upon leaving this earth, je te souhaite, with curses following, her last breath, spitting at my mother who walked away and cried. Mama had taken care of this old bedridden bird for 2 years. How do I walk away from the curses learned at 8 to 58, relived as my mother's memory mine. The seed the old lady planted in my heart of hate, uprooted, unprotected sense of self, saddened by her curses. I carry her word-laden legacy, je te souhaite, now broken with the found words of joy. Like love, actually, hard, difficult to erase, the vehemence at the core of my child's soul, wishing for a better response for one woman's sacrifice for another. She told herself, a mystery upon death's breath, that the old lady tried and tried to apologize. Me, I never forget. I never forgot. To this day, je te souhaite meant spouting curses, hate at death's door, scared the old lady, my grandmother Meme, more than the curses she espoused. The curses came at her in tenfold hell's hot breath in her toothless, ugly face, and then she died. Not expunged, not unctioned, not absolved, until now, by me. Je te souhaite, Meme. Je te souhaite les étoiles. Je te souhaite une bonne journée. Je te souhaite une bonne semaine. Je te souhaite un bon week-end. Je te souhaite bonne chance. Je te souhaite un joyeux anniversaire. Je te souhaite le meilleur. Je te souhaite un bon rétablissement. Je te souhaite un prompt rétablissement et surtout une bonne guérison. Je te souhaite un très joyeux anniversaire. Je souhaite un jour très agréable. Je te souhaite le mieux, amitié, amour, calme, confiance, conscience, Dieu dans le cœur, être, faveur, foi, force, gratitude, guérison, illumination. Je te souhaite une très bonne journée. Je te souhaite une bonne chance dans ta vie professionnelle. Soyez bonne chance. Je vous souhaite à tous un bon réveillon. Je te souhaite un jour très agréable. Je te souhaite une excellente journée. Je te souhaite bonne chance pour en trouver. Je te souhaite moi aussi un bon week-end. Je te souhaite une belle journée, plein d'amour dans ton cœur. Je te souhaite de profiter pleinement de ce jour spécial. Je vous souhaite la même chose. Je te souhaite une bonne visite. Je vous souhaite une bonne lecture. Je te souhaite le plus grand bonheur. Je vous souhaite bien chaque jour. Je vous souhaite bien tous les jours. Je vous souhaite le meilleur à vous. Je te souhaite la meilleure année que tu n'as jamais eue. Dans toutes les années que tu as vécues, je te souhaite ce que soit le meilleur. Alors, je te souhaite d'être heureux dans ta vie. Je vous souhaite de même. Je te souhaite une année chaleureuse et passionnément amoureuse. Je vous souhaite un bon santé et du bonheur pour toute la famille. J'espère que tu passes un magnifique dimanche. Je te souhaite une merveilleuse et surprenante semaine. J'espère que tu vas bien. Je te souhaite beaucoup de bonheur à l'avenir. C'est avec plaisir que je te souhaite une bonne vie. Je te souhaite toujours la bonne chance. J'espère qu'il y a toujours les bonnes choses que te passent. Je te souhaite une superbe journée avec une éternité de souvenirs. Je te souhaite un bon retour. Je te souhaite une très bonne, belle journée, ma chérie. Je te souhaite tout ce qu'il y a de mieux pour l'avenir. Je vous souhaite un bon fin de soirée. Je te souhaite un bon foule. Merci.